Nicholas Wade's new article and the very important quote in it from David Baltimore, where he says that the sequence in the fur and cleavage site is the smoking gun that points toward the laboratory. In any case, we are getting to the point where we can now see that what we were told about the certainty that the viral origin was natural was preposterous for the entire time. And that those who assured us of that, therefore, were telling us something with a kind of scientific certitude that just simply was not justified by anything they could possibly have known.
Yeah.
And so, that's the context. The context is a world in which scientific certitude should be reserved for cases where something is scientifically certain. And it isn't. It's being used politically to get us not to think about certain questions that certain people don't want us to look into. And frankly, I would say we are betting that in the end, the safest thing we can do is promote honesty in the discussion of all of these questions, that fewer people will be harmed if we are simply honest, even though the fact is it's a sword that cuts both directions.
That's right. I did want to say just a minute or two on this Nicholas Wade paper that just came out. You can show my screen briefly, Zach. This is, he just posted it on his Medium page, Origin of COVID Following the Clues. Did people or nature open Pandora's box at Wuhan? And Nicholas Wade, Zach, may I? Thank you. Nicholas Wade is a longtime science reporter who is often published in the New York Times and Science. And this is one in a long line of people, including us from the beginning, who've been saying this. Nicholas and Baker said it in January. We said it on Real Time with Bill Maher in January. I went back and found the first time we were talking about it extensively was on our 10th episode on April 25th, 2020. It was called SARS-CoV-2 Unintelligent Design ? And we were then talking about the paper that Yuri Dagan had just published on Medium, which you then did a full interview with him in June of 2020. So both of those last two are up on YouTube, and I'll put them into the show notes as well. So that's just a little bit, and there's been a tremendous number of researchers behind the scenes who are talking about this.
But we have to point out, not just behind the scenes, Alina Chan in particular and Rossana Segreto have both taken great risks and been courageous and absolutely deserve to be highlighted.
Absolutely. And we've talked about both of their work here before too. We've been talking about this really from practically the beginning. And the virus might have escaped from a lab. If I had said that, and I did say that, when we were saying that a year ago, we were branded conspiracy theorists and right-wingers and loons, right? And guess what? Saying that doesn't make us any of those things, and it never did, right? The reality hasn't actually changed, and I think what has changed is the social landscape of the Overton window with regard to what people feel is socially acceptable to say and to consider. But the fact is, and I said this I think at the Q&A last week, and something that's going to come out as a clip. If you don't consider all the hypotheses for something, if you don't consider it actually your responsibility when you're trying to understand a pattern or an observation, like, oh, there's this virus that just caused, worldwide destruction. I wonder what its source is. Oh, no, there's only one explanation possible. That is anti-scientific right there. That's not conspiracy thinking. That's not right-wing thinking. That's not loony thinking. That's anti-science. That is literally anti-scientific to believe that there is one and only one explanation, and to ask questions about whether or not there might be other possible explanations is itself the problem. Looking for the other explanations and keeping them alive until they have been falsified is an important part of the scientific method. It's not the only part of the scientific method, but all good scientists do that thing. And no one who doesn't, that is, no one who says you can't consider that hypothesis even though no one has really looked at it, they're not actually doing science. They may have a credential, they may claim to be doing science, but that's not science.
So I do have to wag my finger a little bit at Nicholas Wade here. No, not at you. So first of all, I should say his article is quite good. It does a very good job of explaining difficult material. It covers a lot of really important ground. I do think there's nothing new there, really, except there are a couple of new things. But in general, what is there is Nicholas Wade's imprimatur,
Right.
which allows us to discuss this. It has given it another jump in the direction of being considerable in polite company. But that is, Nicholas Wade is late to the party, right? And why am I blanking on his name?
Nicholson Baker?
Yeah, Nicholson Baker's article covered a lot of the same ground, and I don't remember how many months ago that was.
January.
It was January. So he
Sure.
was early. Likewise, Matt Ridley has been on this beat for a long time.
Since like November or something.
So in some sense, as those of us who have faced all of that stigma have made it possible to discuss this in public, we see more and more people willing to acknowledge what is obvious, which is that this was a viable hypothesis from the beginning, that there is effectively no evidence that has emerged that points in the direction of nature. And although there's no direct evidence that points to the lab, the amount of evidence that points indirectly to the lab keeps growing. So yes, it's getting safer and safer to talk about this, and you should expect more and more people to find their way into the discussion. But
I got to say, though, I was really rooting for the frozen ferret badger steak hypothesis.
Oh, man, that it's the most delicious hypothesis on the table by far. But the other thing, and I can't really explain this, Nicholas Wade really screws up the use of the term theory here, and for no reason that I can surmise. For one thing, he's clearly seen DarkHorse, and I cannot imagine he has not seen our description of the importance of this. By calling the lab leak a theory, you are putting those of us who are taking risks in order to make it clear how likely this is in jeopardy, right? You are putting us in danger of being accused of cheating. And the point is, we have to be very careful. So this is a hypothesis, and there is no theory because nothing has withstood tests sufficient to call it one. So why on earth, given the two words, I just want somebody like Nicholas Wade, the next Nicholas Wade, to look at those two words. And when you choose to use the word theory, ask yourself why you didn't use the word hypothesis. And if you think they're synonymous, then you have some studying to do. They are not synonymous. There's a reason we have two different words, and they actually have a hierarchical relationship. Now, in some places, in physics, for example, you will find the distinction routinely blurred, and I think physicists should clean up their act on this. But the point is, this isn't physics. This is biology. In biology, this is a well-understood distinction. This is the thing that we lean on when people say Darwin's work is just a theory, right? We always say just a theory doesn't mean what you think it does. It's as close to saying something is a fact as we ever get in science, right? Well, stop abusing poetic license in this case and start using the word hypothesis correctly. And at the point that we have a theory for where this came from, we'll let you know.